Okay.
Okay, can you hear us now?
We can hear you.
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the Monday, August 10th, 2020 Bethel Local Schools Board of Education special meeting for our facilities project or facilities committee. Call to order will be 5:03 p.m. Ms. Reese, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Rick Gilbert.
Here.
Justin Firks.
Present.
Brennan Hattery.
Present.
Chris Mills.
Here.
Danny Elam.
Here.
Lori Sebastian. Here. Julie Reese here. Caleb Runkle.
Here. All right, number 3, additions to the agenda. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda that we need to add? We do have one item, architectural firms RFQs, essentially a listing of those firms that have applied for the architectural project. Any other additions to the agenda? Number 4, communications, meetings, and announcements. Do we have any communications or announcements from any of the committee members? Okay, number 5, items for discussion, subcommittee reports. Letter A on this agenda item has to do with temporary swing space in regards to the Will Scott modular units and the status update. All of the modular units have been set in place, 9 units total. Currently right now, the company is finishing up punch list items. They've also added ramps to both sides of the modular units. They have also added skirting to 2 out of the 4 sides of the modular units. And I would fully anticipate that we're going to be able to start moving items into the units, hopefully late this week on Friday-ish, which will give cleaning crew and staff members roughly a week and a half or so to kind of get their classrooms set up for the start of the school year. Does anyone have any questions in regards to the temporary swing space modular unit update? Reliable has also been in and hooked up, is in the process of hooking up the electrical and the water as well, if I didn't include that. Any questions in regards to letter A?
Congratulations.
We're getting there. Letter B, master facilities plan, status update, building and athletic facilities locations options.
You want to do this first so we don't run out of time?
Yeah, we can. I will email out a list to the other school board members and facility committee members that cannot be in attendance tonight. You can fully anticipate getting this list either this evening or first thing tomorrow morning. We had 11 architectural firms that have submitted the required RFQ documentation that we asked for the upcoming project. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any of their names. So no particular order. I just went through and listed them in the order that I had them stacked on my desk. First applicant was Richley out of Dayton, Ohio. Second applicant was Schooley Caldwell out of Columbus, Ohio. Third applicant was the N Design TDA Architecture out of Willoughby, Ohio. Fourth submission was Garmin Miller out of Minster, Ohio. Fifth was Levin Porter out of Miamisburg, Ohio. Sixth was Immersion Design out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Number 7 was Hollibird and Ruth out of Chicago, Illinois. Number 8 was VSMC Architects out of Mason, Ohio. Number 9 is Elevar Design Group out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Number 10 was Beelhart's Architects out of Defiance, Ohio. Number 11 was Fanning and Howie out of Salina, Ohio. Those were the 11 firms that have submitted required documentation and items that we had requested through our RFQ. Next steps will be to do a short list of those firms. So I guess at this point, I'd like to open it up to the committee members as far as a potential time for me to get information out to you guys and set up some sort of a get together so that we can take a look at those 11 firms and try to narrow them down to a handful, depending upon what that number looks like. I'm open for numbers, or if it's based on what we look at, to make some sort of a recommendation to the Board of Ed to begin interviews for architectural firms. So that's just a suggestion, but it's open to whatever the committee and the board feels. Any thoughts on that at all?
How's that typically done as far as like a presentation of some sort by them? Or do you wait for the short list for that, or?
You would typically review the documents, shortlist it down, and try to narrow it down based on what they provided to get it down to whatever the number it is, and then you start the interview process.
I would like to interview 3, no more than 4 firms in person.
Okay.
That's my preference.
I would second that.
I'd agree with that. too.
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So did they provide some sort of package or?
Oh yeah, I don't want to bring all the books down. I have 50-page books for each one, and I also have a flash drive also. But I only get one copy, so I don't know. I mean, I guess it's, you know,
You can ask Brian if he's got the flash drives.
he could send, that's the purpose of the flash drive, is to
Yeah.
send you guys all the stuff, so you
Yeah.
have it electronically. I really don't want to make copies of all the books.
So we can maybe take that information and review it and then meet in person
That would be
or
the
Zoom
plan.
or whatever.
That would be the plan. Now, my only suggestion would be not to wait till our next facilities meeting. I really don't want to wait until September to narrow it down and then have to set up interviews. You're running into a time crunch as far as submission of the plan for OFCC consideration.
Can we set a
Mike
date?
and Mark, it's kind of awkward to ask you a question because you guys are one of the firms that applied, but you know, from the start of the interview process to the end, how long time frame wise does that usually take, in your opinion?
Thank you.
Typically, when we get shortlisted for a project, we may have a week to prepare.
Okay.
Maybe 2 weeks, but never more than that. Usually it's a week or so to kind of put something together and prepare, and then, you know, you're either making a selection within a few days of that or a week if you're trying to align it with the board meeting or whatnot. But yeah, it's not a very long turnaround time between the short list and making the selection.
Okay. Do any of the committee members have any opinions or thoughts on, once a short list is created by the group, what that length of the interview, what, you know, how long you want it to be, and kind of some thoughts on what it's going to look like, the process?
I would say like 20-minute presentation and 20 minutes for questioning. Let's not do the hour like we did the last time, because that was very long and, I think it was
very long.
very long.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I'd agree with that. Seems like it would be sufficient.
Any other thoughts or anything differently?
Well, I'd like to know how we're planning to narrow them down. I mean, because probably any 11 of these architectural firms are capable of doing projects. So we're past the point of, do you have competency? All these architectural firms are gonna have that. So I guess my question is, what are we looking at? What does everyone think?
Well, I mean, that's why I asked if they had provided materials. Get the materials.
I mean, there is an evaluation form that's attached on the second page. Did you get that document, Lori?
I just got it, but I guess my question is, I mean, are we gonna consider someone that's out of state? Are we gonna, I mean, those are more the questions I'm considering. I mean, anybody can put a pretty book together. Okay, I shouldn't say anybody, almost.
Well, I mean, we made a decision last time based on the interview and the questions and the materials they provided. So, I mean, can't we just do the same process?
We interviewed, I think, all the companies that submitted last year.
Yeah, but there were only 4, right?
I mean, personally, I'm in a unique situation because 3 of the 11 I've worked with, so. I mean, I have a little background in it. I can't, but that's just me, so.
Is there anything, Lori, on this evaluation sheet, you think maybe we could start with this and then maybe add some criteria to it that you'd like to see or anybody?
And this was the evaluation tool that we used to select the firm for our master's facilities design. Is that correct, Brendan?
Correct.
It doesn't have to be that, it's just a sample of what we already had in place. It can be whatever you guys want it to be.
Well, I think my biggest, I think experience speaks, and what do the schools around us, what did they use? And maybe that's under number 2, economic background and experience in school projects. I mean, to me, that's a big important factor, and, that's just my personal opinion.
I would agree with that, and I would also think it would be beneficial, although it's more time involved, that once you get that short list, you make some site visits to go see those schools, and you speak with some of those people and have conversations with them on what went well and maybe what didn't go so well. And reflecting back on your project, would you do it the same way or would you go differently? But I also know that's more time involved with getting people, but I think it's a big project, so it's well worth the time, in my opinion.
Well, when do we want to have, I guess my question is, what's the date we need or want to have the architect chosen for this project?
Mike and Mark, do they need to be technically listed on the submission to the OSCC?
No.
So we're not under any.
But I would say you probably want them approved by the time that the plan is approved by Oscc, so you can get the ball rolling.
So we basically got 2 months.
That's what, I would say that at the most, yes, 2 months.
The other thing that plays into this is, you're gonna wanna select CMR too, and that process takes a while. So when you want them on the beginning of the project, the longer you take to select the architect, and if the architect is involved in selecting the CMR, it just lengthens that schedule. So just keep that in mind. The CMR, I think, that process may take 45 days or 60 days to get them on board.
Does anybody have objections to trying to narrow it to a short list within 2 weeks and then have interviews at the September facilities meeting?
You guys can score them yourself and you can submit it and we can have
I mean,
I can do a tally thing and show you how it was scored. And then let's see who we like top 4.
I kind of like meeting for discussion because I like to hear what other people are thinking.
Yeah.
Because it can change my opinion. You know, they might see something or know something or hear something or.
So if that's the
Visited
case, do you guys
something.
have any time in the next 2 weeks to have a meeting?
yeah, I can make arrangements. Pretty much any time I'm open.
Not this week, but after this week, wide open. Yeah.
2 weeks would be Monday, the 24th. Okay. Yeah, Tuesday.
Caleb, Rick, does Monday the 24th work for you guys?
Yeah, I think I'm okay on the 24th.
Yep, it looks like it works.
5 o'clock.
Okay, so next, would that be a special meeting, Brennan?
Yeah.
Next special facilities meeting?
Well, these are already special meetings, so we can put it in the minutes tonight that this is gonna be the next one,
Okay,
and then we'll just do the regular, whatever we normally do.
okay, Monday, August 24th at 5 o'clock PM. I will work with technology department to send you the digital copies of all the firms, so you have them ahead of time. I don't know if they're all gonna be able to be sent in one email. It might be a series, because they're gonna be pretty long.
And
So,
if there's any on here, I would suggest we send anything or voting or Justin or if there's anyone on here that we absolutely don't want to use, get that out as soon as possible because it's really a way for time to reach documents. There's somebody on here that's.
okay,
At least that's my opinion.
okay. Okay, perfect.
Do we have access to Dropbox or something like that?
I would have to ask the tech department. I mean, I'm familiar with Dropbox, but I don't know how it works that well. I'll get with our IT guy and figure out what's the best way to submit those documents for you guys to have, if that works.
Sounds good.
Justin, are you able to see my comment?
Okay. Share the link to all the documents, Jacob. Is that what you're asking or stating?
Yeah, I was leaving that as an option. We could put it in our Google Drive and or,
Okay.
put it in Google Docs, and then you'd be able to send it out, and everybody should be able to get access to it.
Okay, perfect. You get one of those? I know. Oh, yeah. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. So that kind of leads us, is everybody okay with that for now? We good? All right, so Monday, August 24th, 5 o'clock PM. We'll either do Zoom or a hybrid where you can meet in here. I will try to work within the next day or so of getting those submitted. Google Drive for everyone to have, and then we'll meet and discuss. And that leads us into number B, or letter B, number 2, building athletic facilities location options. Julie, you want to take this one over?
Well, actually, the status update, I didn't know, Mike and Mark, do you guys have anything you want to say about the master plan? You don't have to, I just put it in there as an opportunity if you had anything you wanted to say.
No, I think we've got pretty good direction at the moment on the phase 1 master plan.
Okay.
Say something.
This is also.
Oh, yeah. I do want to give an update on the schedule. So I spoke with Valerie Montoya about, when she needs certain things from you. So the commission meeting is going to be on October 22nd. that is when the master plan would be voted on by OFCC. So working backwards from October 22nd, Valerie said that she'd really like to have the final decision on the master plan options and any integral LFIs. So for instance, if there's going to be a larger gym, if you want to incorporate that, that really would like to be communicated to her on September 1st or September 2nd. So that gives her enough time to put together the board resolution and the master plan packet for the district to vote on during the September 14th BOE meeting. I think that's your next regular board meeting based on the website.
Okay. Thank you very much for that update. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I also talked to her about the equity rankings, and she said that those are most likely going to be updated at the end of August or first week of September. And I asked her specifically, if it's the first week of September, is there still enough time to update the equity rankings in the master plan documents and the package? She said, yeah, if we get those numbers that first week of September, that she still has time to incorporate any new co-funded share. Regarding the cost of the projects, she really does not have an update on the updated cost calculator. She said it is likely that it's going to be the 2019 numbers, but she could not confirm that. So we're still up in the air about that one.
If it stays the 2019 numbers, that's beneficial to the district, correct?
Yes, it is.
Because essentially what we've done is figured in about a 5%, I believe, Brennan, is that right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So we don't have a board meeting before September 1st though. So if we're gonna do anything, the board needs to do anything.
Got a special meeting, huh?
Could do it that August 24th night if you had to.
Mhm.
You already get together, you might as well just.
But the committee just makes a recommendation, the board has to say it's okay, right?
Right, but the board do that at the September 1st meeting.
We have a meeting on September 1st.
Yep.
Work session.
Okay.
First Tuesday of the month.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
I was thinking it would be the next week for some reason, it would be past that. The first must be the second Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Anything else, Mike and Mark, in regards to status updates?
Not for me.
No.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, building athletic facilities location options. Julie?
Yeah, this is gonna be, Mike and Mark. Brennan, did you get the lowdown? Mark and Mike, the presentation's up. Can you see it?
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about these first few slides before we started talking about the plans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give a little background then. So, Chris, this is Julie. Chris and I and Mark and Mike met a couple weeks ago to talk about some of the options and having them ready for this meeting. And they already had a bunch documented. And then we talked about some that weren't documented, not necessarily new, but maybe just not documented. And talked about maybe what we'd use as the pros and cons criteria. And it's not all pros and cons, it's, sometimes just considerations. So here's some of the disclaimers that go with it. Is just a reminder that the funding is only going to cover items based on the OFCC projected enrollment numbers. So for phase 1, that's a K-5 school and a stadium that includes track facility and the things that come with it, like concession stand, locker rooms, training room, referee room, those kind of things. And, sorry, seats, right, bleachers. And then phase 2 at the moment is an addition to the existing high school that will house both middle school and high school kids. And we've talked about doing, getting a recalculation of the enrollment numbers in the future. So of course, there's no guarantees that that will change anything. So that's our last disclaimer. And then also we have some unknowns. So just keep in mind that what we plan and what we recommend to the board may not actually be what gets implemented, because there's some things that we don't know about, such as the results of a traffic study, the soil boring results, and then of course anything else that may come up. In particular there, I was kind of thinking Corona kind of blindsided us, so who knows what's coming. But you know, just whatever, just keep in mind that, you know, even though we're going to plan all this, there's still the possibility that something may make us change that plan. And another thing that we talked about that we just want to make clear, because we've tried to say it at a few meetings, but we just don't think it probably gets said enough, is that over the phase 1 and phase 2, when we open this new elementary school, it's going to be near or at capacity from the day we open it. So there's some flexibility for absorbing children of those grades, additional children that come to the district in K-5, but we're going to end up using the vacated elementary school to house some of the students that come to our district as growth over the next 10 years. And then the last thing is the drawings that we're going to show are not necessarily to scale. Close, but you know, they're not exact. So just keep in mind, it's just kind of a reference to here's what some of the options could be. Chris, you want to do this one, the pros and cons consideration?
Yeah, so some of the things that we came up with as far as just thoughts for consideration when looking at you know, the different site layouts, or how they affect traffic flow, future development possibilities, you know, auditorium, preschool, stuff like that. The future athletic possibilities, multi-use parking lots, athletic field orientation, and where that kind of goes is how, you know, if you do have a multi-use athletic facility, how orientation of the fields, what direction they face, and that sort of thing, how that would affect the utilization of that building, cost for site development, safety and security, and then aesthetics, just what would look the best from the road. And maybe none of those are in a specific order, but just thoughts for consideration.
Okay, and then some of the things that came up also in the discussion, and I think this came up at the last facilities meeting as well, is the proximity of parking. Should we consider that as a decision-making point? And I think the answer to that is yes. But my feeling is it shouldn't be the final decision because a parking lot's nearby. But we do have to consider it, obviously. It's a great convenience. Also, it costs more to add new parking lots. And, you know, maybe there's some things we can do to mitigate some of that cost by using gravel parking lots initially, or maybe sell some naming rights or have some fundraisers to pay for some parking lots. And just for reference, there's 248 spaces in the current lot behind the high school. The second question was, this was the multi-purpose athletic facility that Chris was just talking about, is can we design an athletic facility so that the locker rooms, training rooms, the referee rooms, everything that comes with having athletics out there are in one building and shared by all sports. So this gives us the benefit of maybe saving some money because we'd be building less buildings to maintain. However, it's typical that football has its own locker rooms, and also there's a desire to separate the crowd going to the concession stand from the football players coming off the field to go to the locker rooms. And then that leads us to maybe some could be combined while others still have to remain separate. Okay, and then something else that came up is when the traffic backs up today, the cars are waiting on State Route 201. So obviously that's one thing we'd like to solve, is not having the traffic sitting on 201 waiting to turn into the school. Another question that came up was, does placing the elementary building farther back from the road give us more safety and security options? Because there would be less traffic around the elementary building itself, other than those working in the building or picking up their children. So you wouldn't have, high school students driving through or using the drives or driving through the parking lots to take a shortcut somewhere. And there are some schools that have a process where parents have ID cards and they check in out by the road, and then the staff is using a walkie-talkie to talk to the other staff at the building, and they notify them who's next in line, so the kids are ready by the time the parent gets back to them. And the parent that told me that, so they really like that because they know their kid's not leaving with somebody else. So that was just an example of maybe some additional safety and security options we could take advantage of if we're not right on the road. Not saying to do that, just consideration. And then the last thing was the confidence in the projected enrollment numbers, and then how will they look when they are recalculated. We just talked about the fact that we're going to ask for numbers to be recalculated. So throughout this document, you'll see some drawings of having a separate high school, because that was the community desire based on the surveys. So that we would end up with 3 buildings, one for elementary, one for middle school, one for high school. But we know that the Oscc has said that costs us additionally. So the current plan is to have an addition added to the current high school, and that would house both middle school and high school. So just so you keep in mind that when we do get this recalculation, it still may not support a separate high school building. So we just have to keep that in mind as we're looking at these drawings.
You guys ready?
Ready.
Okay, great. Yeah, so, looking at these schemes, basically the A1 through G1 series are to show what is going to be on the site for the foreseeable future until phase 2. So this is essentially phase 1, which is the current master plan, which is the K5, and then the potential stadium. Yeah. Oh, I thought somebody was speaking. And then this is basically divided into the 2 phases. So the phase 1 is the immediate project, and then the phase 2 would be the project when the state funds are available. Then there is the A2 through G2, which shows the alternate master plan, which is, let's say the enrollment numbers blow up and it does become feasible for the district to build a new high school. That's just kind of a what if scenario to look at that potential option if the enrollment projections are incorrect. So the 3 main elements that we're looking at in all of these really are the K5 school, the stadium, and then whatever future area we have left over for potential development and or buildings and or athletic facilities down the road. So this is the one where we're putting the school on the northeast side of the site. We've got a centralized location for the stadium kind of near the existing high school, middle school, and then with the expanded parking. So this would be the phase 1. And then going into the A1 phase 2,
Well, phase 1, you have to remember on all these is basically probably 10 years. So if we get funding in 6 or 7 years, takes a year to design and 2 months to construct, you're really looking at 10 years out before you get to that second phase. So just realize that when you're looking at these, this is the plan 10 years in the foreseeable future. And the master plan that shows the high school is right now, we just wanted to show that as a potential option, just to make sure that if the master plan changes from its current master plan, which is 2 buildings, a K-5 and a 612, that we've not done something to the site that doesn't allow for that future high school building to potentially be on site. So that's kind of the line of thinking when we're doing these.
right.
Okay. So you ready for next slide?
Yeah, Brennan, can you show the A1 phase 2? Thank you. So the A1 phase 2, this is what would happen at the CFAP when the state dollars are available. So we have the high school, middle school addition onto the existing school. And then we have potential development for athletic fields. And we're showing the athletic fields in a dashed line. So right now there's no money in the budget for any of the athletic fields, the baseball stadium, the softball field, the soccer field, or the practice football field. None of that is currently in the budget. So one of the things that we were doing is, as a planning exercise, is just to see how these might fit on the site. So anything in a dashed line is right now not included in any of the budgets we have currently. Also, you notice a blue dashed box labeled AF. That is a placeholder for a future athletic facility, which would be similar to the ones you've been talking about in the facility committee meeting, which is a gymnasium building or some other athletic facility that you might build in the future. Again, there's no money in the budget for that, but we're showing it kind of as a planning exercise. So this is a continuation of the A1 scheme, still showing the elementary school, in that northeast corner with the centralized stadium. So let's go to the.
So hold on, Mike. I just need to interrupt for a second.
Sure.
The comments are written a little differently than what you just explained, and I didn't know till today. But the blue box that he's talking about marked athletic facility. I kind of thought that was the shared building that might contain the things we talked about: locker rooms, restrooms, concession stand, referee room, those kind of things.
Right, those buildings are essentially right around the stadium itself. And we're showing a concession stand kind of centrally located amongst the future athletic facilities. So one of the things we're trying to do also is to show if that athletic complex at some point gets developed, that the concessions would be more convenient to those other facilities.
Right, but I'm just saying that the comments are written a little differently because putting the concession stand on the end of the football stadium is not always, didn't make it always common to the other sports.
Mm-hmm.
So the comments are just written a little differently. I just wanted people to know that we kind of use the AF box in 2 different ways.
Okay. Yeah, so let's look at the A2 scheme. So this is the that third option master plan, which is a 3-building scheme. And we're showing, how basically the site would work if the high school is located on the northwestern side of the site, still maintaining the elementary school on the northeastern site, and then changing the addition at the existing building to the middle school addition, which matches the master plan. So again, this just kind of shows that no matter what you do in this particular scheme, you still have room to develop the site if the master plan changes down the road. Any comments on that one? Okay, let's go ahead and look at the B1 scheme.
Did you want to talk about any of the pros and cons that we have there, or?
I mean, I guess in looking at some of these, like A2, phase 2 and beyond. So if our intent is to have our high school soccer team play on our football field, we're gonna have 2 soccer practice fields, 2 football practice fields, 2 softball fields. I guess my question would be, why do we have so many facilities? Softball, we don't even have a JV team. Soccer, I think one of our 2 varsity sports are having a JV team this year, not even 2. But why do we have so many practice fields built in? It seems like a waste of space and money to me.
Well, I think those were, so you guys tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think those were put in there as potential future, just to show that there's space to do those kind of things, and potentially moving them from where they are now so that there is a central athletic complex, if you will.
All right, I was just looking at it because it still shows them on the existing locations as well.
Yeah, that's why he's saying everything with a dotted line in that picture is just future.
Okay.
Yeah, so the B1 scheme essentially does the same thing that the A1 scheme does. And just, to go through, I mean, we could go through the pros and cons. I think the meeting would last 3 hours if we did all that. So I think I'd like to get through the schemes really quickly. And then if we need to go back and kind of talk about pros and cons later, is that okay with you guys?
Yes.
Okay. So the B1 phase 1 scheme shows the 3 elements. We're moving the stadium a little bit further north on the site. And if we look at the B1 phase 2 site, so this again kind of develops the athletic fields around the stadium, shows the proximity to the addition for the high school and middle school site, and again is just kind of a planning exercise at this point to show where things would go. And you'll notice there's also plenty of room on the west side of the site for future growth if another school or even a high school would want to be built over there. So going to the B2 scheme.
Just tell them next slide.
Yeah, next, yeah. Go to the next, there you go. So going to the B2 scheme, this one shows essentially that third master plan, high school up in the northwestern corner. Really the only difference is that that stadium has shifted further north. So we're kind of showing it closer to that potential high school up in that northwestern corner. Let's go to the next one. So the C scheme shows again, the stadium which would be on the corner of Agenbrod and 201. So we're really, shifting that one as the focus of the campus. Then the elementary up on the northwestern side, accessed by Agenbrod. So this, and just to understand, this again would be what would be on the site for the potentially 8 to 10 years until the state funding would be available. So as a planning exercise, it really isolates, the elementary, which could be good or bad, but kind of shows you what would be on the site for 10 years. As we go to the phase 2 drawing and develop the addition, let's go to the next slide, Brendan. Yeah, as we go to the phase 2 drawing, this adds the high school, middle school addition. We still have plenty of room on the site. We're adding the potential future athletic fields in there. There's plenty of room for that. And then going to the next slide, Brennan, which would be the high school, there's still room to develop the high school. It's a little bit tighter on the site than some of the other schemes. but we could still, take some of that parking out if we needed to build an addition onto that high school. We also have additional room down by the middle school for future additions as well. In fact, all of these schemes, they're large enough so that we can accommodate some future growth in every one of these buildings. Some are better than others. So let's go to the D1.
Mike,
Yeah.
if the elementary school's first and it's back in the corner, in the northwest corner, won't that increase the cost for the first project?
It could potentially increase the first cost. What we don't know is what the traffic impact would be on Ag and Broad and how much we would have to do to Ag and Broad to accommodate that traffic. And then looking at the site utilities, I really need to dive into that and figure out exactly where the main lines are. I suspect everything's out on 201. So there'd be some additional development costs related to that.
That's what I was talking about, because the carriage trail people say they just keep on spreading out because you otherwise you have to put whole new facilities out if there are big spaces in between.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Mike, this is Lori. One of my concerns as I was looking through these plans, I have 2 teenage drivers, and I don't like the possibility of putting a high school entrance on Ag and Broad. That's all that teenage traffic, and other time they have to turn, and I don't.
Hey, Lori, we're having difficulty hearing you.
I just said having 2 teenage drivers, I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of sense to put the entrance off Ag and Broad, because then they're making yet another turn. They're having to turn 2 left turns instead of just one into the facility if they're coming from the carriage trails area. So I guess from my vantage, I would prefer the entrance to be off 201.
Yeah.
For the high school.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And, part of these schemes are to kind of explore all of those different options. Yep.
There would be, even in this concept, there is a drive that comes from 201 that you could access to the back of the high school. That goes along the south side of the stadium. So I think in all these concepts, you'll see that we have access from both Ag and Broad and 201 really going to all these sites, because you really want both opportunities to get access to the sites.
Okay, let's go to the D1 phase 1 scheme. So looking at this, we're moving the stadium more centrally located. And this one really impacts the next phase. So going to the phase 2 drawing, Brendan, can you go to the phase 2 drawing, please? Thank you. Our athletic facility built around the stadium. We've got the high school, middle school addition, still kind of centrally located. The stadium, obviously, next to the elementary school. That's something that we need to think about. And then going into the D2 plan, Brendan, can you go to the next one, please? This shows the high school on the corner of Ag and Broad and 201. So this, Lori, might address your comment there, because you've got more direct access to the high school from 201. And there's still room to kind of grow those buildings if needed. So let's go to the E1 phase 1 scheme, please. So this puts the elementary kind of back at the northeast corner with the centrally located stadium, or just kind of flip-flopping those two. And then going into the E1 phase 2 drawing. Go to the next, there you go. Again, we're showing the athletic facilities being developed around that stadium. Lots of circulation, but again, we still have the elementary school on that northeast corner. And then going into the phase, the E2 scheme, showing the high school all the way up there on the north side of Ag and Broad. So this, is kind of one of those issues that you gotta think about. There's less of a of an access point to 201 with the high school up in that northwest corner. So Lori, this one, probably wouldn't meet your requirement there. And I would agree with you. There should be some sort of direct connection, to 201. So that's the E2 scheme. And then going to the F1 scheme, please. Thank you. This one has the elementary all the way up in the northwest corner, centralized stadium. Going into the phase 2 drawing. Yeah, next, there you go. Continuing the development around that stadium with the sports complexes. This is, shows the high school, middle school addition, the additional parking there. And then it's kind of bisecting the site. So you've got the corner at Agenbrod and 201, and then you've got the area behind the woods and to the west for any future development. You could do a new building back there. Going into the F2 scheme, this shows the high school again on the corner of Agenbrod and 201. So we've got more direct access and visibility for the high school at this site. You still have room to build, even in the area between the K5 and the high school in this site, you still have room for another building. And you still have tons of room in the back for development. So this is, again, it's a pretty flexible scheme. Going into G1, these are schemes that were developed by Chris and Julie. And I think just kind of looking at other potential options. And Chris and Julie, I didn't know if you wanted me to go ahead and kind of describe what these guys are, or if you wanted to talk to them.
Go for it.
I'm sorry?
Go for it.
Oh, go for it. Okay. So, here we have the stadium kind of still a little shoved a little bit north. And if we go to the phase 2 drawing for G1, again, the athletic facilities developed around that stadium. We've got plenty of future growth for the high school, middle school addition. And then the corner of that site would be reserved for any potential high school if the master plan changes. And again, the west side of the site is still open for development. So going to the G2 drawing, there's the high school and how it would sit at 201 and Agenbrod. So I think there's plenty of access for the stadium, plenty of access for the high school, and plenty of room for future development. Going into the H1, this puts the elementary school all the way back by the woods. The issue that I think we're going to face with this one is the development costs. This is, you're basically almost 1,500 feet from Agenbrod and a little bit more from 201. So I think the development costs related to the utilities, is no small factor for placing the elementary school here. You still have flexibility in terms of the planning, but it's something that really needs to be considered when looking at the location of that particular site. So if we go into the phase 2 drawing, again, we're showing the athletic fields kind of developed around the stadium. We've got plenty of room for development on the north side with the high school and middle school addition. And then going into the H2 drawing, that would be the high school again on the corner of Agenbrod and 201, which leaves enough room up on that northwest corner if that wants to be developed, or if Julie, I think you've got some land use studies for a possible sale in the next few slides. Then going into the next slide, this is the I1, phase 1. This puts the elementary, right on the corner again. The stadium's moved a little bit further to the east on the site. Lots of room between the existing building and the elementary. Then going into the phase 2 drawing, Yeah, next slide. There you go. Again, continuing the development of the baseball fields, the softball fields, potential athletic facilities around that stadium, with the high school kind of smack dab in the middle between the middle school and the elementary school. This one is a little bit tight. When we put all of that stuff along 201, I think we really need to consider carefully any potential future growth of those schools. So, there's a little bit of room to move, but not much. So for this particular scheme, I think that it's a little bit cramped and may not be as flexible as some of the others. I think,
Mike,
yeah.
that's an interesting question at the end. Can you tell us about that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Danny?
That's an interesting question on the bottom of the previous slide. Wonder if you could tell us about that.
If we connect the middle school and the high school with a hallway, does it count as one building?
Yes.
It would count as one building, yeah. Yeah, so you would be essentially developing a K-12.
No, it's
Well, I'm
middle
sorry,
school and high school.
excuse me,
so-
middle school, high school, that's right.
Yeah,
Six-
you could
six
do
full
something
buildings.
like that if you wanted to put a connector between the two. OSCC would consider that one building. So if you wanted that kind of aspect, you wouldn't actually have the drive going through between the two, but if you had a corridor between the two, yeah, OSCC would consider that a single building.
So Jacob, this one was kind of to answer your question, what if the elementary school was lengthwise on Eggenbrod rather than 201?
That's the next slide.
Yeah, go to the next one. Right. So reorienting it, to Eggenbrod.
Right, but the previous two were also that. It's just having the K5 face 201 versus Eggenbrod.
Sure.
Right, it could go either way. But
Yeah.
but that's what those came from, was somebody asking about putting the land use be
Yeah.
along Eggenbrod rather than 201.
Right. That's certainly possible.
And I guess, when you were talking about expansion, I mean, some of the ball fields could be moved back, right? And to gain some ground in there if that's what the plan.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you just need to look at what those buildings want to be, and how those fields would need to respond to to this potential development. It's, if you put the high school up on 201 like this, it does have implications for a lot of the future development. Because if you did this, I'd probably want to push those fields all the way or not all the way, but definitely to the west, so that you got a little bit more room to breathe for these buildings.
Agreed. Just an option.
Yeah, it's easy to move some of the play fields, but you're not gonna move the stadium, so
Yeah.
that'll be your barrier.
Right, we'd have to decide now
Yeah,
if this is what we pick, right? But
Yep. Yes. Yep. And was there another one?
I know I didn't do one with the combined middle school, high school.
Okay.
That was the question.
Okay.
It's basically the same thing. If you ran a hallway, it'd be one building.
Anything to add to that?
no. Go to the next slide.
Yeah. Next slide, please, Brennan. So the J1 phase one really simply reorients the stadium a little bit and gives that corner of Eggenbrod and 201 a little bit more room to breathe. And the idea here is that there'd be more room for a future high school at that corner. And this one, it certainly has some merit to take a look at. So if we go to the phase two document or drawing, we've got the athletic fields kind of developed, looking at that athletic complex, and then going to the J2 drawing, showing the high school on the corner, right there at Eggenbrod and 201. So this one, it's kind of an interesting one. You still have room in the back to develop. I think that the Each site for the elementary, the high school, and the middle school has got room to grow. So there's plenty of room there. And this one's certainly worth considering.
Yeah, the stadium's not the northwest or north-south direction that we would want it, so.
Yeah.
It's a little more problematic, but it's not to say we couldn't straighten that out and get it in its right orientation. But it does, it addresses the corner differently than the previous schemes, because it kind of puts the front to the corner of Agabra 201 as a concept, so.
So is the stadium requirement strictly east, west, north, south, no diagonal?
That's the best orientation. That's what you'd want to have, so that basically the sun is not in the quarterback's or receiver's eyes when they're going down the field. So if you keep it on a north-south axis, then that's really coming from the sidelines, not down the field of play.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if moving it just that much would
Yeah, we could do a solar study when we do some of these things. It looks like it's maybe, 45 degrees or so, and so I think you're going to end up having an impact on the playing field by having it that much.
Okay, gotcha.
If it was a few degrees, I would say it probably doesn't matter, but probably that much, I would say it probably will have an impact.
Mark, I think that's the coolest looking one so far. That make the high school could really look impressive there, but is it wise to plan something like this, not being sure that the high school is going to be built?
That's the risk on some of these, is if you do it based on all this high school showing up. Right now, Oscc is saying, hey, if you want to do a separate high school, you can. It's going to cost you $5.5 to $6 million, somewhere in that range, wasn't it? 5.7 maybe.
Yeah.
That number could potentially go up too as escalation goes up. So it is a danger of kind of planning for something that may never show up. And you've kind of left that whole corner open. I mean, we could also do this with a K-5 school too. It can have the same kind of presence on the site, to address the corner.
Yeah, but it won't be as big. I don't think it would have the same presence.
Well, you can have the building address the corner like that.
Yeah, I get it.
We're showing a bigger high school. It's from a square footage standpoint, at least what the high school is planned to be is not a whole lot bigger than what the K-5 is going to be. So
How can that be? It's more students and there's more stuff that comes along with it.
it is bigger, but it's not like it's twice the size.
No, agreed. It was like 954 students or something like that.
Yeah. So
But you have bigger gyms and all the stuff that comes with it too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that auditorium on there is just in case, and that's not something that's included, it's just something that's possible.
Yeah, that's basically a placeholder to show, hey, we've got room for an auditorium, and also to kind of give you a sense of how big or how small that item is on the in this scheme,
Okay.
or in any of the schemes. It's not a large element to have to kind of plan with.
We probably need to dotted line that one to match your.
yep, you're right.
your key.
Yeah, I think we showed the auditorium with the high school, just thinking that that's the most logical place for it to be, but it's not to say that it couldn't be a standalone building somewhere else on site. It's a very small footprint in the grand scheme of things for this site, so it really could go anywhere.
And this elementary design here is just something to show that it could be very easily added onto at the rear of the building?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing's been designed. We're basically showing kind of blocks at this point.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's to show the size of the footprint, basically.
that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, we lost the parking on some of those when we, when we met. So some of them I put it back in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think the next slide is related to the land use. Julie, you want to talk about? a
Yeah,
little
I'll do it. Okay, so this was, again, something that came up is
bit?
if we, if we want to set aside some of the land to potentially sell it in the future to fund some projects. So not saying you have to do this, this was just to create a visual to show you what it could be like. So here's some of the statistics. This is current information. Currently, the zoning requirements, you have to have 175 feet of road frontage and a 2-acre minimum. That's for any property with a septic. There is a what they call the planned development, where it doesn't have to be that. If a developer would come in and put in streets and water drainage and everything that a way to handle the sewage and the water and everything. So it'd be similar to a carriage trails thing, right? Then the requirement goes away. But this is for a house with a septic system. So so minimum size 2-acre lot with 175-foot road frontage would be 498 feet deep. So according to the Miami County website, the Broad road frontage is about 2,560 feet. So if you divide that by 175, you can get 14 lots along there with 110 feet left over. Not to say maybe you wouldn't put 14 in there or sell 14 because you might want to have some roads, or maybe they could be put in the 110 feet. So again, this was just in case, in the future, we didn't want to prevent the option, or just to leave open the option of possibly selling it. So if we go to the next slide. So, and these, I didn't do a whole bunch of them, just with some different options. We don't have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 kind of thing, but I did for the first one. So that yellow dotted line there on the kind of going down the right, that's the 498 feet taken off of the Broad Road side. So this first option was putting the K through 5 in the back, and then go to the next one, please, Brennan. Stadium in the middle. So this kind of mimics the first couple that they showed where the athletics are in the middle. It's just pushed back off of Broad Road. And if you go to the next slide, it would mean putting the high school in the corner on this particular drawing. And then there's a couple more options. The next one is moving the kindergarten up to, would not be road frontage. It would be probably the back of potentially some residential. Just so you could see how things fit if we did take that, or if we did leave that land empty for now. And if it was never needed for another project, then, we could also do future development or athletics on that particular space. And just so you know, did you get the numbers for this? So the land today is selling for about $40,000 an acre, which would be around 1.1 million at today's dollars. So the block of land that's the part that's blocked off there, that would represent that amount. Could go up, well, we figured land's going to go up, right? So this design here was changing the elementary to face inward rather than the back of if it was sold, it could be the back of a residential section. So just changing it to overlook the campus rather than the backyards, and with a potential future building next to it. So again, just to show some different options. The last one was just those two swaps. Same thing with the elementary back in the corner. So the next steps we figure are to narrow these down. So if there's any you really hate, you know, we can start throwing out the ones that people don't like or we feel don't meet the criteria. Maybe we don't want to spend the extra money to put the elementary back in the corner. It gets the kids off the road, but you know, there is a cost.
Maybe is not eliminating it, but based on the different designs there, kind of picking the high school, I'd definitely like to see that in the northeast corner, maybe a little bit more central to it. So that way, if we're not able to fund it in the future, to have that one building via the hallway, and then the K-5 in that northwest corner, again, maybe just a little bit more central. Central and north-south orientation to allow for some future expansion there. And then the stadium, more or less in the center of the entire complex, just slightly to the north, which I think like option G or H or something along those lines showed the stadium in a good spot. So maybe not as much eliminating all the bad ones, but just stating what I like.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, G was the one that had the stadium in the middle and the K-5 on the northwest corner and the high school on the northeast corner.
Yeah, Caleb, I think I would agree with you. I kind of like having the elementary on Agenbrod because it would take the parent traffic off of 201. There's a lot of elementary pickups. I was thinking like on, most of you know Park Lane on 235. That's kind of how they designed their elementary. They have that little road. And so I thought that just seemed like what I've seen other districts locally do. I really think the decision we need to make tonight is where we're going to put the stadium, because I think, you know, that kind of drives where we put the other buildings.
Well, so I guess that's the elimination part. So if everybody likes the stadium in the middle, rather than on the south or the north, then that would eliminate some of the options just by default. And then what about the saving the land? What's the opinion on that? We eliminate those, or?
I don't like it, even if it's $1 million. That's not gonna help us very much. I know it's some money, but I would not want to lose the land.
Well, but say you were in a crunch, I'm okay with that. I'm just, the reason for it was if at some time in the future, the school got in a crunch like we were, you know,
Right.
10, 15 years ago,
Sure.
you'd still have that option to sell that land.
I like
Any
saving the land because we could do some really cool things with athletics long term. I mean, we could bring the soccer fields over eventually. I mean, there's just potential, and I want to say thank you to the 2004 board who had the foresight to purchase the land. I mean, it's given us tons and tons of options that most districts just don't have. So I know they probably didn't get a lot of thank yous at the time, but I want to say thank you to all the members of the 2004 board.
Having the land just keeps so many more options. What about a marching band practice field? You know, when that, and other such things like that. And Superintendent David Hennigan at the time there in 2004, that was in that bought the farm. Thank you to David.
So I thought you didn't want to say that. Strip.
What?
You want to say the strip or you don't want to say the
Yes.
strip? Say it. Okay.
As far as where the
don't want that.
stadium would go then,
I don't want to.
Right, but so what I was asking was, do we want to do a design that was these LS things where we leave that empty for now?
Mike and Mark, do you have any idea, even just a extremely rough ballpark of getting the infrastructure back to that southwest corner? If the elementary school were to go back there, would it be $500,000? I mean, is it gonna, even if we said that land's worth $1 million, is it gonna eat up half of that to run the utilities?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking, it could be at least $500,000. I mean, you're looking at water and sewer. I'd be more concerned with the sewer with the inverts, but keep in mind that you've got rock excavation to do back there. That's definitely going to impact that.
Yeah, I mean, you're going 1/4 mile to get to the back there.
Right.
And, hopefully that's not I mean, if you had rock all the way through there, boy, that's just going to drive that cost through the roof. Plus you're doing all the drives to get back there too. So it really adds to the cost.
So what was your number? You said it could easily be $500,000?
We don't, that's Chris's number. We don't have a specific number, but it's going to be up there in the hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the length that you have to go through and the condition of the site with the rock.
Right. I mean, that's what you were looking for, a ballpark, right?
Yeah, just
Yeah, we'll have to run some numbers.
Well, the rock,
We didn't have that concept, so we didn't.
Yeah.
the rock under the south end of the old football field was going to cost $4 million, right? So there's no telling how much it's going to be.
Yeah.
along those same lines, the old bore samples, were we able to locate those, or
Yes. Yeah, I have those.
would you be able to share that?
Yeah, in fact, I think I got that. I think I shared that a while ago, but I'll resend that. Yeah, that was from Mitch Harder of CBC Engineers who did that study. I'll definitely share that with you guys.
Yeah, I think I agree. The stadium needs to be in the center because we're losing we're just gonna have to put more parking out there. If it's not, we're losing all the access to the parking if we move it out on the edge. I mean, the existing parking.
Mike, can you bring up the plans that have the parking in the center? Were those A, F, and G, or were there any others?
You want to know where the stadium in the center? It should be A, B, F, G, H, and I are the ones that have the stadium kind of in the center. So if we start with A, that shows the stadium basically right to the west of that existing parking with a little bit more. B shows kind of the same thing. We moved a little bit farther north. And then F, G, H, and I are basically variations on that same theme.
Yeah, F and A are the same really the same concept. It's just the elementary and the high school locations swap. And then I think G and B are the same thing, again, with the two schools swapping locations. So, depending on your preference of, do you want the the K-5 in the northwest corner or the northeast corner, and then the high school is in the opposite corner.
Mhm.
Guys, how confident are you that we'll need a new high school at that point?
You never know. I mean, it depends on the growth in the area, you know, and you just don't know.
I mean, the enrollment projections, the high school that they've got calculated, I think is get close to double the size that you have now, and that's because you've got a bubble of, I think, 3 or 4 grades that are going through based on their enrollment projections that in 10 years ends up in the high school. And so if you let that play out for another 10 years, I would think that those numbers come down a little bit, but I don't think unless you've got a large influx of students that are not accounted for in this enrollment projection that are really adding to everything. I'm not sure that the enrollment projection is going to, at that time, trigger a new high school. So again, you can do a new high school. There's just OSCC has kind of changed the stance in the last, 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can do that third building, but it's just going to cost you more, in the tune of $5 to $6 million plus to do that. So you can always do it. It's just you may not get that piece co-funded, that additional $5 or $6 million.
Brennan, if you go back to slide 2. So here's what the numbers, the OFCC numbers for 9 through 12 were. So when we would open the K through 5, that was one of the numbers I put in. So the 23.
Yeah, that's what I thought you had. I think you had it was like 800 and some students or something.
580. And then at the end of 10 years, their high school number was 839.
Right.
And that's because they progressed them from grade to grade. And if you go by the trends, it wouldn't be as many students.
Yeah, so if you don't have that many students, it's a worst case of having a separate building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you kind of follow their logic for the high school students, typically when they do those enrollments, you'll see a decrease at the high school level, whether the kids are going to some sort of Catholic school, they're going to another district, maybe because of sports or whatnot, or a career center. We'll pick off some too. Or just dropping out of school. Usually you see the high school numbers drop off a little bit. In this case, they've really retained everybody that's gone through. And I think that's probably because of the growth aspect of the district. But I would not be surprised if you didn't hit some of those levels, just because it does assume that nobody leaves the district. And that's usually hard for that to happen.
So the other thing is, Danny, I just wanted to say that the stadium, where the stadium is kind of in the middle when it's to the north a little, well, either way, I mean, they're just swapped, right? The baseball's on the left versus the right, or the south versus the north. Even if we don't get a new high school, they would be relatively close to the 6 to 12 school, right? Because that'll be on the end of this, so they'll be kind of somewhat adjacent, maybe a little catty corner. And then if we did get a new high school, it'd be kind of somewhat adjacent, catty corner, the opposite direction. So the center, having the stadium in the center there, maybe a little to the northeast, for a good place.
Justin, what's your thinking? You have any?
I looked down there twice. He didn't say anything.
I'm gonna have to take some time to go through all that. get 45 pages, 30 minutes before the meeting, a little more.
Well, it wasn't intended to be, make a decision today. So, we just thought we'd explain what was here. And then you can go back and look at the pros and cons and make up your own, right? Because you don't have to agree with the ones that are there. And then, we were thinking we'd come, like, maybe if we could eliminate some and then come back at the next meeting and have 2 or 3 and then rank them or get some community input, like talk to your neighbors and,
Well, because we already have 2 or 3, because it sounds like we eliminated. Bring up, Vernon, can you bring up B again? Was that one in the middle?
so I think the one that Caleb wanted was G, I think.
Yeah, I think for G, we're kind of probably more G. They'd have the field slightly to the north.
Yeah, G would be where the schools are, where he was talking about, and the track in the middle.
And F was just the field farther to the south.
More to the south, correct?
F is the stadium and the ball field flipped. Same location for the K-5 and the high school. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry, Johnny.
Mike and Mark, are there any differences in your mind between costs for
G.
either F or G with the stadium location? I know it's flipped, but what are some of the benefits or drawbacks from stadium location on those two?
I don't think that there's really that many differences between F and G regarding the stadium. I think the costs there are pretty much the same in terms of development.
It just puts you a further walk from the existing building to the field and to the locker room. So that's the downside of it. It moves everything further north.
I thought we were getting new locker rooms.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. To walk from the school to the new locker room, so is a lot farther walk than having it pushed further to the south.
Locker rooms are on the north end, correct?
They could be on either end.
Okay.
In this particular scheme, they're in the south, but you could move them to the north. And in fact, if you move that stadium south, you'd probably want them on the north side to be, if you wanted to make one building with concessions and locker rooms, you'd probably want them on the north side so that you would develop the sports fields around that facility.
You mean south side, right? You've been saying north, but I think you mean south.
Well, if you move the stadium to the south, then you'd want to put the locker rooms and the concession stands and all that kind of stuff on the north side of the stadium. So that, because that's the side that the sports fields want to be developed around. That's where you have room for them.
Right, but the option we're looking at is the opposite.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
So this is what we were talking about when we had the meeting, is that a lot of schools now are creating this single building that has everything in it. And then it would be in the center or centrally located, not in the center, but centrally located. Can you go to the next slide? So
In that configuration, Mike and Mark, I'm assuming that the home team is going to be on the west side of the stadium.
Correct. Yeah, and all these schemes where we're showing this orientation of the stadium.
And would it make sense
side,
to have the home locker room on the home side of the stadium?
yeah, you could do that, definitely.
I mean, you want to benefit the home team. You're making the home team go to the south end. Just a thought.
Yep.
I didn't understand that. Don't the teams go to the same locker room?
No.
I mean, they have a visitor and a,
You don't want them to. No, you don't want them to.
so you have 2 separate locations for,
Just speaking as a former coach and a player in an AD, usually you have different locations for home.
I haven't
Most of
looked
the
at any
places, most
school
of the
that has
places
that.
we play, you have to, kids go to the bus. There's no locker room for visitors.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, usually when kids come back for games, home games, a lot of times they go home and then come back. They're not coming from the school. So it would be, in my opinion, okay to go with that. You know what I'm saying? They'd be probably driving back.
You mean with it here farther to the north?
Because that was a concern like now, when we still got the high school kind of farther away, but usually they go home if it's, I mean, it depends on the kid, but.
So in this diagram, the north end is where the locker rooms are, the training room, the referee room. You're saying that both the visitor and home teams are not in the same building?
Look at our current stadium now for a football game. Where does our home team dress at?
They come into the locker rooms,
And
right?
where's our visitors go to?
I have no idea.
The school, different location.
They go in the old,
No, they go right into the locker rooms. Right.
The new locker rooms. Home team goes in the bus room.
Correct.
Yeah.
oh, the
They'll go
home
to
team
same
goes in the bus
location.
garage.
There's a locker room in the bus garage.
But in this diagram, were they not both on the north end?
They are.
I believe that's,
Yeah, that's,
We're in the weeds too much. I mean, what do you think, Danny? Do you think this one, or do you have another preference? I'm really struggling with the stadium, whether they are on the other side, but I think I could live with them.
I think I'd be all right with either one of them. Maybe my head's not in the right place, but I'm looking at the parking.
Okay,
I'm looking at how much parking is available for that stadium. It looks like there's plenty right there now. It looks like there's plenty. The way that it is here, connected to what we have now.
well, and you could even potentially have overflow, you know.
Sure.
I mean, it's a lot closer than clear out, or from here back, right?
Yeah.
So.
With the parking addition that you're adding there, Mike and Mark, how many anticipated spots would you gain?
From a zoning standpoint, I think they want you to have, one for every 4 occupants. So, we're really trying to shoot for probably 500 or a little bit more with a 2,000 seat stadium. So we're trying to at least double what you currently have, maybe a little bit more, for that scenario.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So what's shown on here is gotta be more than doubling it, right? Because the little gray part is the 248 spaces.
Yeah, there may be a fudge factor in there. It's maybe a little bit bigger.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then we could count the ones in the K5, right, as our multi-use parking.
That's a possibility. I guess it depends on how convenient you want the parking to the stadium.
Well, there's another small parking lot to the west.
That's not part of phase 1 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably count it, but it may not be as convenient as it looks, because wherever your ticket booth is, if it's all the way in between where the baseball and the football stadium are, you're walking quite a bit of distance to get there. But yes, you could call that overflow parking, or some people might want to park there to get an easier way out, depending on which way they're going home. But it's not as close as you think it is to getting to where you want to enter the stadium.
Just on the other side.
You might go this way, the other one.
I like the stadium more to the south, just because of the proximity to what is absolutely for sure going to be a high school. And it's still in close proximity, even if you build an additional building in the northeast corner.
Which option was that?
F.
Yeah.
Yeah, And then like for reference, if you just say if I came to fruition,
Mhm. Okay.
with a high school in the northeast,
Can you go to I? Sorry, Brian.
or that, yeah, that would work. Imagine
No,
that
not
building as
I.
the high school. I think it was I2 or, yeah, that one right there. So if you ended up building an additional building, I think that might have been kind of what Caleb was saying as well. A building that could or couldn't be connected with a hallway.
I thought he was saying he wanted K-5 in the northwest, high school in the northeast.
All I'm talking about at this point is the stadium.
Yep.
The K5 could go up in the top right corner
Yeah,
as
so
well.
that stadium is the same as G, not as F. Right, because there's ball fields to the south of it.
I think with F or I that we're looking at here, I think, I don't know if we necessarily have it on there, but maybe just moving that stadium to the location of F and kind of keeping some of the other stuff the same there as far as the high school location. The high school doesn't have to sit completely on the northeast corner there. It could slide down a little and be more centrally located there. So putting the athletic fields to the south, based on what we have currently and what we'll have in the future, makes sense to me.
Well, I just, looking at this, I think we want to stay away from what we've had ever since this school was built. Everything's all jammed up in one corner, and this looks the same. This looks like it's all jammed up in the front.
Well, they still want the K-5 building up on the,
Well, in this one, yeah, I'm just saying in this.
no, they don't want the all three buildings altogether.
But he wants the,
Mike and Mark, were there any issues with OFCC with connecting a building via hallway? We're gonna run into some issues with that.
They'll consider it a single building.
So what's the negative to that, if any?
Nothing as of right now. Now, if you were trying to connect all three buildings, again, if you made the connection after your project was done, they don't say anything about that. If you're doing it to begin with, then the master plan needs to say that it's one building, which is what it does right now. So yeah, it's to your benefit if you connect the two, so that in their eyes, it looks like it's one building.
but I agree with Danny, even if the elementary is up on the other corner, you're still jamming a lot of stuff into the same area. That's one of the reasons I like the stadium to the north a little bit, because that kind of represents the future, right? So if we put it again in the south, we're still in that corner. Whereas if we move it out, we start kind of moving that direction. And I don't know, that's just,
I mean,
and I like the impact of having the high school on the corner. If we're not gonna save the land to sell in the future, then I would rather see the impact of the,
Which diagram is that? Can you bring that one up so we're looking at apples and apples?
well, maybe the
I
very
don't know
next
if
one.
it's-
I really like the one where it was turned on a dime.
Oh, that was J. If you go down a couple, you'll see the one where it's.
I mean, if we're talking about the distance of a baseball field, we're 300 feet north or south, is it even gonna make a difference?
You don't like that one? Okay, then G, then you go back to G. G was the one that,
Well, go back to F. Look at the difference in the parking. Go back to F. Look at the parking lot design. Are we gonna be happy with, if you look at G?
That long skinny
Yeah,
parking lot?
the parking makes more sense to me like that. You're gonna be able to fit more spots for your square footage.
Go back to that original one.
that's J.
So maybe not that exact layout, but what would be the problem with the fabric in the elementary building
where you have a high school building now, which allows multiple access points, opens up and connected to the other parking lot, allows people to traverse around the entire complex. And if we chose to have enough, if there's enough space, if we choose to possibly build that high school in between middle school and then elementary on that little corner, we could put it back up on the right where the elementary is. And then that would kind of be the cornerstone of our, that requires us to turn the corner, I would say. And the fact that it forces us to move the next project or facility
West.
around. And the elementary sitting there on that piece really would kind of pull everything together with the ability to move around, even the track, the athletics. I'm not saying the stadium that way, I'm just saying if we kind of looked at it with the elementary right there where that high school building is, I think that would possibly allow us a unique opportunity to take a look at that.
So the only thing is that everybody so far has said they don't want the elementary on 201. And that would mean that if we did get a high school, it would be up on
So
Aggie.
the biggest, the way we set that road, set backwards off 201, but if the traffic flow was off Broad, it would primarily be off of Broad.
Well, you can't force people to.
High school traffic take up on Broad, put the high school traffic on.
So what I'm looking at is, right, we have large events and things where we need to move traffic, right? If we allow the access to drive through the elementary parking lot, to make access to the high school parking lot, or access to the athletics, you kind of tie everything across in that loop of Broad and 201. And you can then have multiple ways in and out. And everything could kind of flow together, because you could tie that main entrance in with all three. Future site, current site.
Well, I think you're gonna have that anyhow with all of them. They kind of laid out roads where it ultimately gets connected as the buildings get built.
So I was looking at that because that would also allow space if we don't earn the requirement to build a high school. We'll have space for the addition in the middle for the future. And it forces us to forces the move to the corner and allows that Broad to make the elementary facility kind of stand out. But just as a thought, it's good to have a thousand. I mean, you have a lot of pictures from here. That was one thing I saw that wasn't in the mix. Putting elementary like that.
See, that's the reason I don't like the elementary out front, is because I don't want people cutting through the parking lot. Because we've got our smallest, youngest children there, and I don't know, just, and I kind of agree with Lori's comment that I'd like to see the high schoolers not going up and down Broad. I don't know.
But by the time the high school is built, Broad may look completely different. So just as a thought, and part of the ongoing project could be to enhance that.
Yeah, but the roads leading to Broad, that means you'd have to change everything. You're still talking country roads. I don't know. I mean, it's an idea.
Broad could be the next large.
We have that diagram in here with the with the elementary on the corner and the high school in the back with a gap in between. We have that. We have the high school in the corner with the elementary in the back and the gap.
Rick, this is Lori. Do you have any thoughts? Because you've sent 3 kids through and we haven't heard from you.
I was just trying to figure out which would have more traffic. You know, the drivers from the high school, or all of the parents from the K through 5. And if we do B, the stadium on either A or B, the high school could still set in there like it does on J. We'd still have that corner. It could go in there at an angle.
Well, A and B show the elementary on the corner. on the Ag and Broad 201 corner. Is this what you were talking about, Jacob?
Let's just have that thing. I was talking
Oh,
about
having an angle, okay.
crested roadway to allow for quick bus access. Just all of the things, and you could not connect the middle school and the elementary together, put gates up, but they only open when you have large events, and then it's for traffic. But it allows for overflow. You have a lot more parents coming to the elementary to assist during the school day and the need for parking than you do in the high school. And that seems to be the largest issue, one of the largest issues. And I was thinking sharing parking spaces connected would allow for to meet all those different needs. However we do it. However you gotta figure out, break down all these choices because there's positives and negatives to every one.
Yep.
And I
Hence the list
thought I'd throw it out. I really like the idea of the building sitting
at an angle.
at an angle. So, not that anybody drives in that way, but, having that turn, really, it cuts the sunlight in the morning and in the evening.
Right.
And so, it would possibly help in the wintertime with the parking area, but reduce some of the costs for cooling and requirements based on where the sun is.
I'm with you. I like the angle. I just like it to be the high school.
What do you think about the elementaries or the K-5 on an angle there, but the stadium in the same orientation that it is there?
Yeah, because that way we're connected there, and it also allows for the opportunity, right, that turn between what that space ends up being between where the middle school is and the K-5, that the high school building could sit behind the middle school, between the middle school and the gym, or middle school and the track. It could, be all, we have multiple options where that could end up in the end, so.
What do you mean between the middle school and the track?
Yeah, where that parking lot is.
There won't be enough space there. Because you saw the one where I put all three on down one side, even that I had to shrink the space. Like the high school is smaller than what's in the other pictures.
Well, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, because I wasn't sure if pictures were truly associated with the scale of the photo.
They're not drawn to scale, but
So, I was just saying, there's a potential that it could fit it multiple ways.
right.
Even getting rid of the gap, to connect it on the corner. So,
If you're gonna put the school on an angle, my personal preference would be to have the stadium stay east and west, or north and south, excuse me.
Yeah, we can do that. I just thought it was cool to put the stadium at an angle.
You're gonna have it at an angle for 8 years though, until you build a new facility.
Right, that's true. I mean, but that's what you have to live with for, it's gonna be there for the next 100 years, right? So have we eliminated any? Yeah, we're running out of time. So how about we go off and study this and talk to your neighbors, and you guys wanna have some input, teachers, staff?
I have a friend who's built a number of schools.
Maybe go visit some schools too. That's where I got a lot of my information and some of the ideas came from going to some other schools and looking around, seeing what worked and didn't, talking to some of the parents from those schools.
So we're looking at the 24th.
The 24th at 5 o'clock.
All right.
Where's that? Okay, yeah. Okay, so on the next then.
Next steps will be Monday, August 24th at 5 o'clock.
Well, not next meeting, next steps.
Review what was above, which as far as the information that's provided to you in Google Drive, and prepare for August 24th at 5 o'clock.
So we need folks to review land use options.
Brennan, do we have any hearing in the public?
I have none.
Next meeting will be August 24th at 5 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Mr. Elam, can I get a second?
Second.
Caleb? Michael? Ms. Reese, can you call the roll?
Yep, Rick Gilbert,
Yes.
Justin First,
Yes.
Brennan Hattery.
Yes.
Chris Mills,
Yes.
Danny Elam,
Yes.
Lori Sebastian, Julie Reese, yes, Caleb Runkle.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 6:53 p.m.